Hi everyone, it's Gigabeef here, and today we're going to be looking at the RFB and also comparing it to the VEPR Hunter, which is an extremely close contender for the best value weapon in EFT. So stick around and let's get going. So let's start with why the RFB and the other 7.62 NATO weapons are so powerful in this game. As any veteran at VFT will tell you, it's the rounds. It's the bullets that make the gun and not the other way around. 7.62x51 is an extremely powerful round, and especially early in the wipe, even basic rounds for the caliber like M80 will punch through most people's at best level 4 armor. Specifically with the RFB itself, its position in the progression being unlocked with Peacekeeper 2 is actually pretty early if you focus on getting there, requiring level 14 and admittedly a decent amount spent with him of $11,000. But once you've done this, for $481, which is roughly 60,000 rubles, you can buy the RFB from him directly. They can even get down to below 50k on the flea market once you get there as well. When it comes to modding, the RFB is very low on its requirements, coming out as a solid usable right out of the box as several of the semi-weapons do. It starts out at 49 ergonomics and 159 recoil, but due to its bullpup configuration, it has no replaceable stocks as part of its modding system. I've discussed this in a previous video regarding the MDR, but it's the same principle here. Without a high base recoil and the ability to mitigate it with the stats of a stock, this means that the RFB just can't get very low in general on recoil. Its 0 components base is 173 if you strip it right back, versus something like the AKM which has 194, but the AKM can get lower as it has replaceable stocks with multiple tens of percents recoil reduction that the RFB doesn't benefit from. If you want more information on how this recoil system functions, go and watch this video that I'll link at the top, because this will explain in a lot more detail what I'm talking about. On the flip side, it's actually okay at base, and secondly, you don't feel guilty about using budget components, because the best in slot attachments just won't change the recoil that much anyway, and are better saved for higher tier weapons. Let's take a more detailed look at the build itself. The RFB has one rail underneath and one rail on top for attaching both foregrips and scopes. What's not to love about this? It makes it very straightforward to mod. First off, let's look at grips, and grips are easy. We'll look at this a bit more in a second in terms of the numbers, but as we said, don't over prioritize the value of recoil on this weapon. I tend to use the AFG grips because usually they're cheap on the flea market, and they're also cheap from Peacekeeper level 3 once you get there, and they give a standard 2% recoil reduction, but they're okay on ergo at +6. Pre-flea, just use whatever you have available, even the basic Knight's Armament vertical from Peacekeeper 1 for that extra +7 ergo, which is pretty good on this gun, as the ergo isn't amazing and could do with a little lift for faster ADS times, especially if you're adding scopes later. For optics, you're pretty limited until level 20, but one that is available early is the Prism, although I feel like this is a little rough on eye relief for the RFB. But either way, this is available at Skier 2, which is level 15, along with the little mount that you have to buy to fix it to the Picatinny rail. The other alternative at Prapor 2 is the KMZ scope, which can be bought with a mount that attaches to the Picatinny rails, which is what you need for the RFB. This is actually a nice scope, but you have to click through it twice to get it to move from 3 times to 10 times, because the middle setting illuminates the reticle, which is quite annoying. Otherwise, you're really just going to have to wait for the flea to get something nice like the Elcan, which is what I've been running as my staple given it does 1 times and 4 times, and this gives you a lot of flexibility in firefights. One thing to mention at this point is that you can't put a laser or a flashlight on the RFB because there is no attachment slot for it on the side of the weapon. Maybe there is a clever way that I haven't thought of yet, so let me know in the comments if so, but the only way that I know to get a laser on this gun is to use the Holosight 1x optic, which comes with a laser attached to it. Obviously this prevents you from using a better scope, so otherwise you're kinda out of luck. On to muzzles, the barrel can take the RFB spacer to mount compensators and suppressors from Peacekeeper 1. The best that you can physically do here is reduce the recoil from stock by 47, from 159 to 112 using the 3-part brake, the T-Lock SIG suppressor combo, but I think this is a bit of a waste and you're better off using this on an SR25 later on. You could also do the blast mitigation 3-part thing, but this requires high trader levels too for the lowest recoil unsuppressed build, so I don't think it's really viable early game. The first real compensator that you'll likely get access to is from Peacekeeper 2, which is the Knight's Armament QDC flash suppressor for -8% recoil and -1 ergo, but unfortunately the actual suppressor that goes on the end is on Peacekeeper 3. Either way, it's actually okay standalone. The first good compensator from Mechanic 2 is the AR-10-2A for -9% recoil and -1 ergo. But then you have the fleet anyway at level 20, and there's quite a few on here that are decent, such as the Odinworks Atlas, which is -14% recoil and -1 ergo, and given the best in slot recoil reducing attachments in this particular category of -15%, this is literally half the price because no one really cares about second best in slot it seems. Getting to the flea then easily lets you go suppress 2, if you want to pay for it that is. The Thunder Beast is the best for recoil, but you might consider going for a wave combo instead, as it has better ergonomics, and as we've seen, it doesn't really make that much difference to the overall recoil if you have the best one versus one that's not quite as good. Sometimes the wave is just more expensive than the Thunder Beast as well though, and prices are really volatile, so check them out at the time. I do admit that these two-part muzzles are annoying to look through because you have to check each combo separately and there's not really an easy way of looking at them all in one go. Now, onto magazines, which are one of the best things about the RFB. In EFT, only some of the 7.62 NATO guns can take higher capacity mags, the SA-58 and the M1A being the kings here with 50-round drums. A few other good weapons like the SR-25 and the MDR can only take 20s at max, but one beauty of the RFB is that it can actually take up to 30s. You won't be using them on a budget build, but it's an option to bear in mind. Or you might decide to pick up one from the flea, use it as your main mag and use 20s for the rest. However, in my opinion, 20 is plenty as they say, and I've been using these nice ergonomic plastic 20 rounders from Mechanic 2, which only lower the ergonomics of the whole weapon by 2, which I think is awesome. Right, so now we've gone through some viable early game builds for the RFB. Is it better than the Hunter? The Hunter is a great weapon, and it is very cheap for what it's able to do. In my opinion, it is probably the ultimate Chad killer 0 to hero type weapon because it has the ability to kill anyone in any armor at any range when used in the right way. If we go to look at the best build for this gun, this basically comprises of the SVD style ergonomic stock from Jaeger 2 and then the suppressor, which is about 30,000 on the flea, and that's pretty much it. Now, it does have a totally different mounting system, which is that of the dovetail rail like the SKS, which opens up the PSO lines of scopes, as well as regular mounts too for using other scopes like the Elcan that we talked about before, so it is quite flexible. However, one of the biggest downsides of the Hunter is that of magazines. This has and always will be the downfall of the Hunter for new players, because you can't buy the 5-round mags until Jaeger 2 and the 10s until Jaeger 3. Once you get to the flea market, the 5s are usually pretty cheap, like 5,000 or so, and the 10s are at about 10k, but this really starts to eat into the value of the weapon when you're shelling out at least 15,000 for 3 bad mags and 20,000 if you take 1 10 and 2 5s. This still really doesn't leave you with a lot of bullets for each engagement. Another dynamic that has dramatically changed the way the Hunter plays out, which in my opinion is actually a massive nerf, is the new durability mechanics. Previously on the flea market you could pick up a new Hunter at max durability because this wasn't really a proper feature yet. With the advent of 1211 however, this is now very different. You're able to grab a Hunter really cheaply from the flea market at anything down to 15,000 region, which is insane for this gun, but as a result you'll be looking at half the durability that you used to. Now for anyone that has tried to use the 50% durability weapons, the accuracy of these is really questionable now, and it provides a massive nerf to the MOA of the gun, which kind of takes it out from the kill anyone from anywhere category in my opinion. I used to love using the Hunter with the PSO as the ultimate budget DMR, but now if you're at any reasonable range, you can't guarantee that your shots will actually go where you pointed. This is a big issue. If you want a proper durability Hunter, you have to pay up 48,000 rubles from Jaeger for a new one, as there are very few high durability Hunters on the flea as they almost all come from Scavs. At that point you may as well just go and buy the RFB instead from Peacekeeper, and you can often find these for under 50,000 on the flea as well, and these will almost always have 100% durability because those RFBs on the flea were usually found in a weapons box in Raid, which means they come with max durability to begin with. For absolute pure min-max value, I suppose it still goes to the Hunter at shortish ranges using ones from the flea and decent ammo like M61. There is a reason that you see people farming killer with it. But it's just not generalist enough anymore at the cheaper end due to the accuracy, and so the RFB has taken its place for me as the better value budget 7.6251 NATO weapon. If you learned something or enjoyed today's video and want to support the channel, please as always consider sending a like and a comment as it helps with visibility for those who haven't found me yet on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter and Twitch to check out when I'm live, which is currently 2 times a week, once on Friday at 9 PM UK time for the real-time recording of the Scav Talk podcast, which you can check out the link to in the description below, and a regular Tarkov stream on Saturday at 2 PM UK time in the afternoon. And with all that said, I'll see you next time, and as always, have fun in your raids.